Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 26, 2024. This is the Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:31 with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and
to
the
republic
for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
for all. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A Section 20. And on March 29, 2023, Governor Healy signed a supplemental 2023 budget bill allowing remote and hybrid meeting options for public through March 31st, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. Well, welcome everyone. Tonight we are continuing to review warrant articles, and then hopefully after we have our presentation, we can start to make our recommendations on some of them. But the first up, we have some members of the planning board here, and we are going to talk about the planning board articles first, so we can I'll introduce, I'm not sure who on the planning board I should give the floor to, but I'll let one of you, whoever's taking the lead, introduce who's here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm Jim Whiten, the chair, and with us is Bob Daler, the vice chair, and our town planner, Michael Burris. And Michael Burris is going to lead the demonstration of what we're doing. So,
Terrific. And I'll just ask everybody who's not speaking if you can put yourself on mute. And then, were you going to do one article at a time and then open it for questions, or did you want to complete your presentation first? What's your plan?
I'm open to however the finance committee typically likes to do their reviews.
Okay. Well, let's do one article at a time, because then all of them together would be too overwhelming. And we'll try to let you get through your presentation unless someone has something quick, but we'll try to let you go through that first.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So here is an overview of what we'll be covering here tonight. They fall under two buckets. The first is fixes to our zoning code. So we'll be talking about short-term rentals. Per guidance that we had received from the town attorney, they had outlined that uses that are not expressly allowed in our table of uses are not permitted. And so we're making a fix to that. The congregate living, there is a section in the assisted living section of the zoning bylaw that requires congregate living, but it does not define what that is. And so we're proposing a definition. And regarding lot width, we get some pretty strange lot arrangements proposed in subdivisions. And so the planning board is proposing this amendment to bring lot shapes into a more regular development pattern. And then there are a couple of zoning changes too. The first we'll go over is rezoning the unrestricted district to the residential and agriculture district. We'll get into these a little bit more further because they're a little bit more involved.
Before you go, can everybody see the screen? Because I'm having trouble. It's super small for me and I'm not able to make it bigger. Can everyone see it okay?
It's
pretty
very
small. It's pretty small.
You can't read it.
Right. Thank you. I didn't know if it was just me.
Oh, much better. Much
Oh,
better.
thank you
Yeah,
so
better?
much. Much
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so then we'll talk about the business district between Fall River and Route 88 and rezoning that into a new zoning district called the Westport Gateway District. And finally, some amendments to the Science and Technology Overlay District. It would be renamed the Mixed Use Science and Technology Overlay District. So our first amendment is regarding the short-term rentals. And I'll just give an overview of what is involved in this zoning amendment. So as I had said a minute ago, uses that aren't included in the table of uses are not permitted. And so that presents a little bit of a conundrum for the town, just because this is a use that's historically folks have used their homes for in Westport. And so for them to not be able to do that anymore, or the town to have to do enforcement, something that the planning board wanted to correct. And so the purpose of this bylaw is to allow the use of short-term rentals in the residential agricultural zoning district and the business and unrestricted districts. The caveat for the residential agriculture district is that there must be a 7-day stay in the short-term rental unless that is otherwise waived by special permit, and that special permit would be before the Zoning Board of Appeals. This bylaw establishes an annual registration requirement that would be administered through the building department. Just be a basic form that folks would have to fill out, and that way we can track where there are short-term rentals in town. And there would be some limited standards. Most of them are more administrative standards, such as requiring a local contact. You have to be registered with the Department of Revenue, and so on. There would be some restrictions on them, such as not allowing commercial events. So you couldn't have like a conference on a property or something like that. And finally, there is an enhanced enforcement provision established solely just for this particular bylaw, which is where if the building inspector who administers the zoning code, the building inspector issues 3 negative findings, either code or town bylaw violations, in a 6-month period, that would result in a 6-month suspension of short-term rental activities on that property. And that's all I've got for this slide.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this article? So this is Article 33.
Yes, I have one.
Go ahead.
I assume that this requires something that's being paid for. In other words, you're talking about conferences and so forth, a gathering of people with no payment involved, I assume would not be subject to these rules.
That is correct. So, having a group of people to stay in the short-term rental, that would be okay. Obviously, you would want to make sure that you're not exceeding the occupancy capacity of that house, but that's more of a building code issue than a zoning issue.
And I think some might have a party or other things, which not a matter of residency, but you wouldn't want to have to find that you fell into this kind of a thing on just a normal gathering with no commercial element.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
I don't see any other questions, so I think we can move on to the next article. Thank you.
All right. Next up is the definition for congregate living. So as I said, the assisted and independent living zoning bylaw requires that independent living facilities incorporate what's referred to as congregate living arrangements. But the problem is that there's no definition for congregate living in the zoning bylaw. And so this has created a situation where we get proposals where the developer is saying one thing is what they're proposing is congregate living, but the expectations of the planning board are different. And so in order to fix that and make sure everyone gets on the same page, we need to incorporate a definition for congregate living. And so I'll just read it verbatim. The definition for congregate living will be a shared living environment that combines housing and supportive services where residents share one or more common facilities, including but not limited to kitchens, dining areas, bathrooms, and recreational, cultural, personal care, or social service facilities. Examples of supportive services include, but are not limited to, transportation, healthcare provision, and laundry and meal services. Residents must have their own bedroom.
Thank you. And that's Article 35 in our warrant.
Question, if I may, about congregate. What zones would permit that kind of institute of establishment?
There's a variety of zones, so I can pull up our table of uses right now. But it is permitted in the residential agriculture district by special permit. It it may just be site plan in the business district just because, but I can check that really quick unless.
So that would mean the people next door could have a halfway house or something and put it under the category of congregate living?
No,
There's
because
great specificity as to what the kind of establishment under this would turn out to be.
so the congregate living zoning bylaw is intended for age restricted housing. So it would be for 55 plus, and sometimes even higher depending on what type of facility they're intending to create. So it's
Does it
more,
say that, or is that policy?
so it says that in our zoning bylaw.
Anything else, Hugh?
No, I'm
Okay, thank you.
not
Cindy, go-
enthusiastic, but I understand it.
Okay, great. Cindy, go ahead.
Is there a limit as to how many individuals could be included in one congregate facility?
This definition would not introduce any sort of restrictions on how many individuals could be in the facility.
Is there any other part of the bylaw that would restrict how many people could live in under one unit with the shared services? Is there any other part of the bylaw that would cover that?
No, so typically what we would, the planning board's expectations is that in one of these facilities, there would be a concentration of residents in one space, so there's easier access to provide the supportive services that the residents need. There is room for having some more scattered housing around there, but the expectation is that there is a centralized facility.
But
I
would that,
assume-
would that
Go ahead,
prevent,
Susan.
would that prevent anyone from, putting 4 people to a bedroom and have a 4-bedroom house that's now really compact with 16 people in it? And they're sharing, a kitchen, they're sharing all of these things over 55. I understand that part. I financed a number of congregate facilities, but I'm just curious as to how you're going to monitor how many people are being confined in some of these units.
So residents would have to have their own bedroom. per
Oh, okay, right, you did say
the
that. Okay, I'm
definition
sorry.
here.
Yeah, okay.
And I think the way it would be monitored is the way it would be monitored for any other sort of type of housing that may
Right,
be
okay.
exceeding the occupancy.
It's not monitored, but does it also mean that you could have any number of bedrooms and therefore have rooming houses and that sort of thing?
This is a separate product from rooming houses or something like
How
that.
do we know that if you have separate rooms with a shared facility?
There's a whole zoning bylaw section that outlines a whole set of criteria for the types of supportive services that should be offered, the types of amenities that should be offered. And so the way that this is structured is it's not structured as a boarding house. It's more of a senior housing facility.
So it's addressed elsewhere within the bylaw.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The effort is to make it plain that it's a facility, for instance, like Laurel Mead, if anybody knows that. So as opposed to just independent living without social services or meal services or any of those things.
Anything else, Cindy?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Al, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just very briefly. My mother is currently in assisted living, so I understand the concept. I think it's great, but when I hear the word, and maybe this is my cynicism about politics or good intentions, when I hear the intention is, if it isn't explicit in the bylaw, that's when my hackles come up a little bit, my antenna come up, let's call it, because we could all have best intentions in the world right now, but 5 years from now, with a new group, all of those intentions could change. So I am not opposed to this. I am just simply saying that it would be nice if it were tightened up a little bit to reflect what the real intention, if you will, of this board happens to be. So I just wanted to toss that out on the table.
There is a set of development standards in the zoning bylaw text that we could have a conversation about. I don't know if it's really germane to the introducing this definition to the zoning bylaw.
Any other questions, Al? Oh, Hugh, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to join with Al. Things that are intended but not spelled out in black and white are easy to dispose of if you come in with a plan that nobody thought of that literally fits into things. So wise to be clear about what is mandated and what is thought about.
Thank you, Hugh. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, we can move on to the next article. Nope. All right, Michael, I think you can move on.
Okay.
Thank you. What article is this, just to make sure, because I think you're going a little out of order than what's in the warrant. So I just want to make sure we're following you.
Sorry, I don't have the article numbers. I was not forwarded the placement that these would
I think
be
this
in.
is 38, Karen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 38. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you. So, as I said earlier, the planning board will hear some kind of creative approaches to achieve frontage and lot widths, and so in order to try to get a handle on having more regular lot shapes at the front of the lot, so where the lot is intersecting with the road, essentially. This standard, it's a lot of words up on the screen, but essentially what it's saying is that each lot that is up for the creation of a new lot will require that there is a 100 by 200 square lot area at the front of that lot. So, like, as I said, there's quite a bit of words here, but that's essentially what it's saying.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on this? Hugh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the problem is this is trying to fix. I understand frontage, but I also understand that there are times when there are budding properties and other things that will make it necessary to jiggle things around so they fit or where you want to do things and keep the frontage in place. I'm a little unsure why this is a fix, maybe looking for a problem. Why is this necessary?
Jim Whiten, would you like to chime in on this one? Just because I've only been with the town for a year and a half, and so you have a lot more experience in seeing the types of subdivisions that come through. I think you could speak to that.
Jim, you're muted.
Yep, you're
Jim,
on
you're on
mute.
mute.
Okay, all right. In some instances, for instance, you have a road coming off of the main road, a new road that's being created, and there's a cul-de-sac, and they use the frontage of the cul-de-sac almost in the same shape as the cul-de-sac to go around to give it the frontage that is available to create the lot. And we changed this in the planning board, not in the planning board, at town meeting, we had it changed, maybe 12 years ago, 14 years ago, to require that you have 50 feet, a 50-foot circle could go from the frontage to where the building is. And we continue to get lots presented to us that have as little as 10 feet wide to get the adequate area and frontage. And to the point that it's impossible for the homeowner to enter their lot from the road and get to their house without going on somebody else's road. We do have ways to deal with different situations where there's a lot of land in the back and not enough frontage in the front, called flexible frontage. And we're not trying to circumvent that. We're just trying to make the lots a little more conform. Some communities require them to be much more than this. And this is just a step, I believe, to make it more, make neighborhoods that you want to live in and not neighborhoods that you really don't own anything until you get to your house.
And as Jim said, there would still be an outlet for some of the situations where you need to have a more of a malleable frontage situation, and then you could apply for that flexible frontage with the planning board.
And so I think this makes sense. I believe that it is good planning. I believe that it would be to the benefit of all in Westport.
Great, thank you, Jim. Al, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, so Jim, if I can follow up, pardon me, on a couple of quick points. Who feels that this is the best for the town? Number one. The other thing is, what's the difference between 50 and 100 feet? 50 feet is enough room to bring a legitimate driveway into a back piece of property. And so what was thinking about that? I mean, I have no skin in this game. I mean, it's nothing to do with my property or anything like that. But it just, what's the saying? It almost sounds like there is a solution looking for a problem. I think that's the word, or the phrase, I should say.
Well, I won't say which subdivision this is because it's not correct, because it will come back before us. But we've recently had a subdivision proposed that had all these spiders of lots coming off of a long road. And it just does not fit into the neighborhood where it's going to go. And it really creates a problem for the abutters to this subdivision, because all of the traffic goes really along one driveway for 9 lots. And it really is, it is something that is, I think what happens is the engineers that come with plans think of it as a geometry puzzle, and as opposed to creating a good neighborhood. And this is just a step in the direction of trying to create good neighborhoods in Westport, as opposed to solving the geometry quiz for the developer.
So could I quickly follow up, Karen, on this? So you have a neighborhood where this is a potential challenge. Is it worth putting a bylaw across the entire town for one particular neighborhood? Is there another solution?
Not,
No, it just Al, this is Bob Naylor. It just so happens that we had a recent submission, but it isn't a unique problem, that we get curved roads which are allowed, and then people have been, and they put the required 150-foot frontage, but they put very skewed angles, and they quickly neck down the lots. And so you get these very you get these lots that have the required frontage, the required area, but the way they don't end up with any decent front yard. That the effective width of the road of the lot sometimes is just enough to get a driveway in, and it ends up with very odd shaped looking lots. And we're trying to make sure that a house sits with a front yard as the zoning intended.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And
Yep.
I just want to make a point. We appreciate all of the information that you're providing to us because I'm sure members of the general public are listening, but I want us to, as a finance committee, to make sure we're focusing the articles that we'll be recommending are ones that are financial in nature. And this one does not sound like it's financial in nature. So I appreciate the information, but I'm not sure how much further we need to go on this. Unless someone feels that it's financial in nature, then we can continue. All right, Hugh, go ahead.
No, I was taking it down, sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Hugh. All right. Thank you, Michael. We can move on to the next one. Let's see what article this is before you go. Hold on. I bet Michelle can figure it out quicker than I can.
This one might be a tough one. Don't even, this is the unrestricted district residential agricultural district.
I think this is 36.
Oh, unrestricted. Yep. I think
You
you're
think
right.
That's it? Do you think it's 36? Okay.
I
think-
do.
All right, I think this is Article 36. Okay.
Thank you again.
Is there some way to make it bigger?
This is probably about
Yeah, better.
as big as I can make it.
Okay.
So this isn't right here. The map is an outline of the unrestricted district. And what this amendment would do is it would replace the unrestricted district with the residential agriculture district, and then the zoning bylaw would remove all references to the unrestricted district. The reason this is being considered being proposed from the planning board is that the unrestricted district allows industrial uses. And so currently this area is completely residential. It has significant amount of wetlands. There's some agriculture land here, or the land is undeveloped. So as it stands now, there would not be any non-conforming uses created by this rezoning. Also, this area includes an aquifer protection area. Planning board doesn't think that allowing industrial uses in this area would be appropriate with that aquifer protection area. And as I said, there are sensitive environmental features like the wetlands, but also the Bread and Cheese Brook, which has a TMDL for nitrogen. So again, trying to create, or not create, but continue keeping this a cleaner environment for the natural features and for folks drinking water. And I'll turn it over.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, I see no questions, so we can keep moving right on.
Okay, so the Westport Gateway District.
One
And-
second, Michael, we've got to find your article.
37.
37?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. So the Westport Gateway District it's intended to harness the investments being made on Route 6 and using the zoning as a tool to try to translate that development into different types of land uses that can diversify the town's tax base. And so, zoning is just one tool to guide development. So while we can't necessarily give a fine-grained prediction of which type of land uses might give here, we can through our zoning bylaw put some parameters around the potential new investments. So the Westport Gateway District, what it will do is it'll provide additional development potential and flexibility for new residential and commercial investments. It will have a more defined development review process through the site plan procedures. And it's also intended to complement the Mass DOT upgrades on Route 6. They'll be reformatting the way that the traffic patterns work, including pedestrian upgrades. And as I said, capturing the growth from the Route 6 sewer project. So here are some highlights of what this zoning district will do. One, and as I said, I guess I kind of skipped ahead. There would be a defined development review process that would just typically require a site plan review. This district will also promote flexibility for commercial uses. And so this gets back to the issue that we had talked about a little bit earlier with short-term rentals, where if the bylaw does not reference the specific use, it's not permitted. And so in this bylaw section, what we would like to see, the planning board would like to see, is that if there are similar uses outlined in the Westport Gate, or if there's uses, so with the uses that are outlined in the Westport Gateway District, and someone wants to propose a similar use, the planning board finds that to be a like enough use. That could be something that could be brought before the planning board. And so the example I use here is a coffee shop versus an ice cream shop. Similar types of uses, but it may be precluded if you're not allowing that flexibility otherwise. Next is to expand commercial, residential, and mixed use development opportunities. And the development is intended to be oriented around pedestrians in order to complement planned Mass DOT Route 6 upgrades, as I had said a little bit earlier. Some of these elements include requiring connections to sidewalks, requiring parking to the side of rear structures, having some architectural standards that would improve the corridor's visual appeal, and requiring more landscaping and development more generally. An important part of this bylaw is that there will be a requirement to buffer development in the Westport Gateway District from less intensive zoning districts. So that would be the residential agriculture zoning district. It would also require that there are traffic studies and mitigation measures implemented with the development. And the development would be kept to a smaller scale. So that scale would be around, it would be 3 stories. So if there are any questions about this one also kind of gets into the next one as well with the Science and Technology Overlay District, but we can talk about them at both times, however you all want to do it.
So I've got a quick question. How much land is undeveloped? So how much is to be developed still?
So I actually have a slide later on. There's not a ton of completely undeveloped land. And in fact, in the Westport Gateway District, I think there are essentially 2 main parcels that are undeveloped right now. They're used for agricultural purposes, and they're about 56 acres total. There are other parcels that are developed. They would, probably with the Route 6 sewer upgrades, they would be underutilized for the kinds of services that they would have access to. And those would fall under the category of like lots with surface parking lots that are just being used for storage.
So without much land to develop, how would it really help commercial opportunities? Where are those commercial opportunities?
The commercial opportunities could be in different commercial developments that are looking for new tenants. So with more commercial uses being available, potentially fill those tenancies faster. And also this would hopefully encourage some redevelopment opportunities as well, because as I said, there are a number of properties that, if the sewer were to come in, would be an underdeveloped property for the kinds of services that are right at its front door.
Great, thank you. Hugh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I'm not all sure about some of the parking lots that you refer to. I think of the ones at White's, et cetera, run down the way. Those are part of the businesses that are there that aren't going anywhere. So the fact that parking lots doesn't seem to me means there's something that's subject to future development because they're part of an ongoing business.
Those would be fall under the category of redevelopment opportunities, and I'm thinking more further in the eastward and in the direction of Route 88. There are some storage lots around there, and I know that there is an owner of a property in the 6 area who is using a lot for sort of machinery storage or vehicle storage, who is interested in redeveloping that property.
There are a number of in the section to the east of Sanford Road, on the north side of the road. There are a number of small parcels that have dumpster storage on them, truck and equipment storage. There are some that have temporary school bus overflow parking, those type of uses, which are clearly underutilized. And sort of around the corner on the north side of Route 88 on Sanford Road, there are a couple of large undeveloped parcels which are in Section 61A. They grow cow corn on them. So that's the LaFrance properties and the pieces that are at the far western end of the gateway. Those are all developed, and it's unlikely that they would get redeveloped in the future.
Well, there's a rumor, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that somebody owns one of those areas used for parking or something, who has a 50-unit apartment building in mind. That would devastate the school. So I wonder what control there is over what actually gets built in that area.
Well, a project like that would all come with all of the controls that are in the zoning bylaw for, limits on height, limits on
It has
traffic.
nothing to do with it's not height and limit I'm talking about. It's a 50, and I don't know if it's true or not, but the rumor is a 50-unit apartment complex, which would, forget the physical dimensions, it would cause lots of people and lots of kids and lots of expense for the town and for the schools. Is there any control over that in terms of sizes, densities, and so forth?
From what I understand, there is the owner of the former Yellow Freight Yard south of Route 6 and across the street from the Edgewater Apartments. And I think that owner would like to build another type of Edgewater apartment complex, which is, I think, for older folks.
Also, I just want to note that single-family homes typically are going to have a higher impact on school enrollment, and they will typically create a higher service delivery costs as well, because they're more spread out. Single-family homes and many communities typically will have more students brought into the school district than you will have with a multi-unit development, especially when the market is starting to change quite a bit, where there's an aging population and folks are looking to downsize from their homes. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
Al, go ahead.
So there are a couple of things that I want to bring up. One of the things, and I have clearly I don't have a life because I've spent a lot of time listening to the videos of the different committees, and what I hear about all the time is the revenue stream for Route 6. Serped was in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, if I remember correctly. You know, I could be off a little bit, but I never hear about the expenses. I never hear about the cost associated, both the fiscal and the social cost of the proposal for this trunk line. I also never hear about why we are as a town spending potentially $35 million on a trunk line to benefit a few developers that are going to put in housing. Now, I don't have a problem at all, of course, nobody does, with clean water and sewerage. I'm, you know, this isn't, you know, my battle about that. But there are so many unanswered questions regarding this. Who's going to pay what? Is it 20%? Is it 10%? Is it 90% for the town? And I can go on and on and on, which I will not do, which I could do, but I won't do. There's just so many unanswered questions about the zoning tied into the this trunk line, if you will, which, by the way, the article doesn't even consider it a trunk line. Say what you want, but the lawyers apparently
Let's
decided.
stick to this article though,
Yeah,
Al,
sorry.
if we could.
I could go on and on. Yes, you're
Oh, no, appreciate it. Thank you.
so good for you for pulling me back. I just think that there are so many unanswered questions about this that need to be answered from a fiscal perspective for the town to make an informed decision, and I don't think we're getting it. Thanks,
Thank you.
Karen.
Thank you. No, and I just, I want to just add on to what Hugh mentioned, and Al, you did too. So if there is such a 50 apartment complex that could be built, I would also feel that could have a significant impact on school enrollment. So whether or not they're apartments, and yes, more families will live in single family homes, but people can't afford single family homes. And if an apartment's available, I don't think we should be ignoring the fact that a 50 apartment complex, as this example, would not increase enrollment. So I think that is something to be considered. And that is a concern I have in part with this article, or the next article is really talking about how it's going to impact the town and services as well.
Karen, could I say something here?
Yeah.
We're talking about this article, which is the Gateway District.
Right.
And what this is doing is taking the existing commercial zone and changing it into the Gateway District between 88 and Fall River. And that is basically the most commercial area that we have on Route 6. And what we're doing is just relaxing the requirement so that we could get more businesses to invest there. The Serpent report from, I don't know, 8 years ago suggested that if we had water and sewer, the lots that are there that could be redeveloped, repurposed, or any other lots that were not built on, you could, within 10 years, get an extra $400,000 to $600,000 per tax revenue based on 8 years ago that would pay for that section of the sewer cost on an ongoing 20-year basis. And what we want to do is, our commercial area in town is the same in Central Village as it is on Route 6, as it is on 177, there are different areas. They shouldn't be that way, but that's what town meeting has has approved over the years. And what we're trying to do is to make this area so that we can take advantage of Route 6 being redesigned by Mass Highway, and to make it a little more enticing for small businesses to either reinvest in what they're already doing or other small businesses to come in. This area is not going to be a big box store area. We don't have any place like that in Westport. It won't develop like Dartmouth. And I think this would be a win-win if we got that kind of revenue increase, and it would be, I think, at very little impact to the cost of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh, go ahead.
I don't have any trouble with the commercial side of things. My concern is the residential and the impact that both Al and I were talking about in passing. If it's purely commercial, no problem.
Thank you, Al. I'm Hugh. Thank you. Anyone else on this article? So I just want to ask a question to follow up, Jim. So if the purpose of the developing here is this is the most crucial commercial zone, are there no restrictions being placed in this article to limit residential and kind of encourage commercial, or are we allowing residential as well?
Residential is allowed in the commercial districts in town, just as it is residential area. And as you can see on Route 6, there's a mix of residents and commercial, as there is in Central Village. I mean,
Mhm.
so if somebody wants to do residential, more power to them. I mean, they still have to comply with all the zoning regulations and our bylaws and site plan review and all that stuff.
Great, thank you. Cindy, go ahead.
Well, isn't it true, in fact, that we're supposed to comply at some point in the near future to have dense housing, a housing density plan to satisfy the rail issue, that if it's in that 1 mile zone near this gateway district, it would satisfy the requirement for us to have that housing density plan that is required by the state for that. There's only one community that's really put their hand up and said, no, they're not going to do it. I don't know what the outcome of that will be. But in fact, if there is some residential in there, it would help us satisfy this. We can't keep it all out all the time.
Mhm.
So Cindy, if I could respond to that, that is to do with the MBTA station
Right.
laws that the state has in place.
Right.
To date, because Fall River doesn't have a station yet, we're not required to yet.
Right.
Fall River will have an operational station and trains by the end of this year. Next year, I believe that the legislature will include us in the requirement. So we would be required as an adjacent MBTA community.
Correct.
So the question will be, are we an adjacent community or all town adjacent? And there'll be different requirements for those. And those would, they won't take into account that we have multifamily housing. We will have to zone area of town that allows 15 units per acre by right. And as you said, Cindy, Milton is the only town that has said no. I'm sure that's going to court. I've heard Governor Healy say, gee, I guess Milton doesn't want any state aid. So, so if we don't do that, and we're going to have to do that next year if we don't do it this year, we're going to need to make a place in Westport It doesn't have to be, we don't have to build it. All we have to do is have a place where it's allowed by right to
Mhm.
have 15 units per acre. And it could be 750 units, or it could be as less as 375.
Right, and this is not a piece of legislature that goes under the radar. I mean, they are very vigilant. The MBTA, the state is very vigilant about this.
They will do it.
Yes, yes. And in addition to that, I mean, you know, we would benefit from the new growth of the valuation, but we will probably also see an assessment on our state aid for the fact that we're benefiting from the rail station once it's open. So it's also going to cost us some additional funding from the state because of the benefit of having that. It's supposed to increase the property value in the area. So therefore we get an assessment for that adjacent rail station. Hopefully we could get some offsetting tax dollars in valuation, at least in new growth that would help offset some of that if that were to come to fruition.
Right. And the state, we could fight it just like Milton is, but you'd have to fund the lawsuit.
Right,
We don't have any money to do that.
right.
And we would lose considerable state aid too. I mean, if
Right.
So, I mean, not just the stuff we would get when we have it, but the stuff we already have.
Yeah, I think it's an important point to make sure that people understand that is very real.
It is. And we've been following it for several years, and have been in touch with DHCD and other groups in the state to try to figure out, are we an adjacent community, or will we be, or are we a small town adjacent?
Great, thank you. Hugh, go ahead.
Just going to say that Cindy and Jim are unfortunately right on the numbers. The state has no interest in the future of the town of Westport, and they will do to us whatever they choose to impose their decisions.
Right.
Thank you for the comment. Al, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to echo that and add on a bit that the state is famous for mandating without funding, and this is another example, or will be another example of this. And I would just like to also suggest that the whole impact of this mandate, if you will, or find another word of this gateway, will forever change the social and economic. I'm not sure about the economic, but would the social fabric of the north end of Westport. And what we end up talking about is the town is still going to be on the hook if we do this. The trunk line, which I know is a little off topic, but it adds to this. $35 million with no source of funding other than the taxpayers of the town to a state mandate that will end up and with no changing everything. And I go back to my earlier comment about Serped talking about $400,000 to $500,000 of tax revenue for the town. But what's the cost? What is the cost on the other side? Everybody loves to talk about revenue, but nobody wants to talk about the cost. What about the new the fire station that will end up having to be put up in the north end of town, because that one is 50 years old and decrepit, and all of this new building and on and on and on. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of unintended consequences to this decision. It's just not a a net positive all the way around. And I don't think anybody, whether it's the planning board or any other group, Serped, have really, bored down into the cost benefit ratio, the return on investment of what we're talking about, the infrastructure committee. So, I don't know.
Well, Karen, I don't know if you want to talk about the trunk line, but I can give a few minute rebuttal to Al's questions if you like, or I can just skip it.
If you can make it brief, I think that's a very important article, and I would appreciate if you have some words to say. But then I would like us to get back to the last article, which is another very important one for us to discuss.
Okay, so the $35 million for the trunk line is just for the trunk line. It isn't any money to go into the neighborhoods, and that will come in later years. And I just want to be upfront with that. I mean, the trunk line will sewer the water and sewer the entirety of Route 6. But it just, for the town, for future thoughts, it's just the trunk line to be able to get into the neighborhoods and provide clean water for people that live on small lots that have contaminated wells. And we're going to have real problems in the near future with PFAS because even on Sanford Road right now, we have wells that have PFAS, public wells that have PFAS in them. And we're going to have trouble fixing that without this long term. The federal government is about to, the EPA is about ready to change the metrics on PFAS from 19 parts per million is the threshold down to 4. And that is really, really hard to get if you have PFAS in the groundwater. Number 2, if we don't deal with the nitrogen in our estuary, like they have done this year on the Cape, they have the DEP has made a rule that you have 5 years to come up with a plan, a 20-year plan to remove the nitrogen from your estuaries. And if you don't come up with a plan, then you have 5 years to upgrade every single septic system to a denitrifying system. And if we had to do that in Westport, at the tune of $20,000 to $40,000 each for every single septic system times probably 6,500 septic systems. If you do the arithmetic, that's a lot of money. It's like $200 and some odd million. And then you finish that and you still don't have clean water. So the trunk line allows us to stay out of DEP's crosshairs. And that's the reason that they let us off the hook, because the people in the Board of Health sent them a long, long report on what we're doing and what we're planning. We've already spent, I don't know, Bob Daler can tell me, I don't know how much we spent on sewer plants so far, but I think we've spent close to $1 million or more. We are going to get almost $1 million from Representative Keating as a earmark. We can get money today from the state revolving fund at 2% loan for 20 years. And if we do it now, it's a lot cheaper than doing it 10 years from now. Just look what happened when we did the fire station and the police station. The first iteration was a combined safety thing, and it failed. So we did several years later the fire station, and then several years later the police station. And all told, that cost us millions of dollars more than it would have if we'd done it the first time. And I think that this is so that's the main issues. I don't know if Bob Daler wants to add a couple of words, but that is where we are. And that is why we need to do the trunk line now.
I'm happy to have a discussion about the sewer and water, but hopefully we can get through the zoning.
Right, let's get back to our last article, which is, the, the very interesting one, I think, of the bunch, at least in some people's view. So if we can do that, and then if we have time at the end, if someone, we want to talk anything about the water and sewer, Bob, we appreciate you're also on the infrastructure committee. So thank you for extending that offer. So the next article, this is Article 34. So I think that now that's our last article, right?
Yes, that's
All
our.
right. You've saved the best for last.
All right, yeah. Okay, so the mixed use science and technology overlay district. This is the former science and technology overlay district, and it's very similar to the Westport Gateway district in some aspects. And so one thing that I just really quick wanted to mention on this map here, it's identified in a red circle on the left side of the map. It is proposed to pick up a couple of parcels at the southwest corner of Route 6 and Sanford Road. And so the MUSTOD, as we've been referring to it, it would update the permitted land uses to include residential and contemporary commercial uses. So there's some uses in there that need to be updated, like call centers is one of them, for example. And so that's not really so we're updating those uses to be more contemporary and then consolidating some of the uses into larger categories. It will also allow for the same sort of use flexibility that the Westport Gateway District will have. And so, yeah, so that's really just a quick overview of that one. Again, it's kind of similar in approach as the Westport Gateway District. I do have another slide just talking about development in the Route 6 area, because it, in the previous slide, it's a pretty big land area that is shown in that overlay district, but there are some pretty substantial development constraints in that area that, after discussing with the planning board, that they would like to have referenced in this meeting. And so just really quick, there are some environmental challenges for development, especially on those parcels on the south, so south of Route 6, those large parcels. You have to have some not only wetland, but floodplain crossings. And so those crossings would substantially increase costs to development. It's also worth noting that in some of those parcels, again, the large ones to the south of Route 6, Chris Capone, he's our conservation agent. He's familiar with those properties. And while there hasn't been a full wetlands investigation of those properties, from his familiarity with them, he does think that the wetlands delineation would be expanded. Another challenge for this area is access. So there's the cost of road construction. Some of these parcels don't even have road frontage. So that presents a pretty substantial challenge for development. And regarding utilities, the developer and our, as the things have been proposed with the Route 6 sewer project, developers would have to incur the costs for utility expansion. So if it's, going onto their property or down a street that's not connected yet, they would have to bear that cost. Again, with those larger parcels to the south, they do increase in elevation, and which would require pump stations. So we bring this up because although there's a large land area involved in this rezoning, the underlying land has some characteristics that will render projects infeasible without a substantial multi-million-dollar upfront investment in infrastructure. So I circled where we think between these two rezonings where we think development is likely to occur. Those are those parcels that I was referring to earlier that are either underdeveloped or undeveloped, and those would be the prime locations for development. So this is to say that, kind of rezoning the entire science or former science and technology overlay district is looking to a window of, a lot further along down the line and the future for when utilities may be available in this area. Bob or Jim, I don't know if you have anything else to add between this and the previous slide.
Just that the access to these parcels that are the big ones would have to come through Route 6 and would also require purchasing some property on Route 6 because they don't abut Route 6, the big ones. There is some possibility of accessing a few of them, a couple of the big ones from Briggs Road. But here again, you'd have to buy a property and do it, and it would make it even harder to get water and sewer in there. So there's a lot of constraints. I cannot see myself anywhere the number of residential units both Cindy and asking about. And if we got 3 buildings like have been put in Lincoln Park, I would be surprised. And so I think that the possibility, as we have discussed, is probably more commercial development because they have the money to be able to do that. And it would be, I think, low impact to the town. And as Cindy was saying, we are really going to need to designate some area that can accommodate zoning for 15 units per acre for the MBTA stuff. And I think this is a better place to do it. You don't have to build it. You don't have to enable it to be built. You just have to zone it for it.
And just a quick follow-up to that point, Jim. One thing when you're doing your MBTA housing allotment, wetlands do not count in that calculation. So it actually has to be developable land.
Right. But there's plenty of uplands in there, but it's hard to get to.
Right.
Great, thanks. I think Hugh, you've got your hand up for a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple. Number one, in dealing with the Gateway District, Jim said quite rightly, we don't know what the mandated numbers would be for intensive housing because it depends upon what it gets classified as at some point in the future. So let's wait until we know what we're dealing with, because we don't want to give an authorization for 700 houses if it turns out it should be 350. And I assume that some limitation can be built in once we know what the mandate is. Number two, I don't see why we need to rezone this Route 6, this swamp area at this time at all. Everybody's saying maybe someday in the future it might be used for something. Well, I would say let's find out. If somebody wants to do a project, then it's perfectly appropriate to consider that project and how a rezoning at that time with something concrete to deal with could be appropriate. But now it's a blank check. Everybody says nobody's going to do anything in the near future about this because of the topography, et cetera. So why rush to create a blank check?
Thank you, Hugh. Cindy, go ahead.
So in my professional career, my position was, by and large, I did financing for large scale builders all across the country, both for senior living, multifamily housing, single family housing builders, healthcare issues, et cetera. And one of the primary requirements in many of these developments, now granted, some of them were certainly much larger than this, but even on the smaller scale ones, that it required, particularly with multifamily units, that for each number of units built, they need to provide open space for for playgrounds for children to have. Bob Daler, could you put your thing on mute because I'm getting feedback from your,
I got it.
okay, good. All right, thank you. That they provide some additional open space for every certain number of units added to this. So it cuts down on the, number one, on the density, but it also provides a better quality of life for the people that live there. And additionally, although this was an area, you know, in many areas where land was much less expensive than it is here, it required the developer of that parcel, of that large parcel, to either A, make a substantial payment towards education, the future educational expenses, and or set aside land in that development if there's sufficient space for public use, for public school use, or for some other municipal use that, whether it be a public park or whatnot. So there's a great number of restraints in addition to impact studies for traffic, for wildlife, for environmental impact. All of these things were included in the zoning right up front. My fear is that, yeah, this is a start to Gateway, and someone goes in there and they secure the viable permit because we're kind of skin and bones on this just starting out until we think of all the things that need to be added. And then that developer is grandfathered in, and he gets away with, he, she, whoever, whatever the company might be, gets away with being able to put it in skin and bones until the light bulbs go off. Let's face it, we're a town run on a lot of volunteer committees, that we don't have the full-time, brain trust that we can go to every day in many of these cases. I mean, Michael does a great job, and you've got a short staff in the planning board. The whole town has short staff, and we're run by these nighttime committees that meet for 2-3 hours a week. So there's so many things that could be added on to a developer and the requirements that would benefit the town in the long run and still satisfy the goal that we, if we need multifamily housing, yes, there is a low income requirement that should be necessary. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Route 6 is not a bucolic little area that we're trying to destroy here. There are a lot of parcels there that would really benefit from having an upgrade, and maybe even multifamily housing is the answer. But they need to add something to it. They can't just put it up without giving back in a big way. So, I really oppose this only from an economic standpoint because I feel that there are so many more things that we can extract from a developer that wants to do this that would benefit the town in the long run. So it's, I think there's a lot of things to think about in this.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Go ahead, Hugh.
I just want to say Cindy said what I was thinking much better than I could have said it.
Thank you. I'll agree with that too, but go ahead, Al, go ahead.
Same thing. Cindy did an eloquent job of pulling out of my brain what I was thinking. I think that this is premature. It's not a negative, but it's premature, and there's a lot more that could be done and extracted from this proposal. So I cannot support it
Thanks, Al.
in its current form.
Okay. Go ahead. Thank you. I guess some of my questions really are, so my understanding, this original science and technology district was initially created commercial because we thought that would be an optimal place because there's enough land there for commercial development. I'm trying to understand why we changing it to residential? Why are we not holding it for commercial development? And again, reiterating the same things that we've been saying, it seems premature. We don't know what we need to do for housing. So why are we looking to change the residential requirements now? And Hugh mentioned it's a blank check, and that's what this feels like to me. And I asked how many dwelling units could go on this property? I'm just looking to understand if it were fully developed residential, how many dwelling units could go on this property?
Well, I object to the idea of the blank check idea. I'm holding the the zoning article, and it talks about the open space, the interior landscaping, the buffer zones from residential, all of the requirements for the developer to pay for all the infrastructure for the development. This reads, as a person who works with developers all the time, none of the developers I know would read this as a blank check, number one. And number two, the idea of the chicken and egg idea is this something which is a good thing to do, but not now? I have two thoughts on that. The first is this is a place where we could put the zoning density that we know that we're going to have. We know that the MBTA is going to require a place in this town that allows 15 dwelling units per acre. We don't know the actual number of units that would be required, because it depends on whether or not we know that we are going to be an adjacent community later this year. We don't know whether or not the MBTA would see us as a small town adjacent or just a regular adjacent community. And that doesn't change the density requirement. We're still required to have 15 units an acre. It just requires fewer units, so that, we are acting, this planning board in proposing this is acting proactively for something that we know. When we proposed it, the station was supposed to open in Fall River last fall. So this was going to be a need that we had this year. So when we started working on this was a this year need, not a next year need. Now the station didn't open last fall and is opening sometime this summer. But so this is where we put this. And we put it here because it's not directly on the road. It's not directly, this site is constrained. All of that light blue green colors that you see essentially pinches off the site. You can't gain access from 88. You're not allowed to gain access from residential areas on Sanford Road. So you have to come in either from Briggs or you have to come in from 88. And you have to buy some parcel because there's no open land you can get into. So that if you look at what is the probable development you could end up with reasonably easy. That is, if you laid out at the front end, several million, 3, 4, 5, who knows what the cost is going to be to buy a unit when you absolutely need to buy a property on Route 6, but the price is going to be up. So you're laying out all this money at the front end, and if you look inside that red circle of that's reasonably what you could get, so that if you built something in those open lots behind behind the businesses that are right along Route 6, you might get 200 or 300 units in there. And that's essentially where we're going to end up with an MBTA requirement. So we anticipated the station to be open. We crafted something that was as best we could zoning compliant with the MBTA housing requirements. And we look at multifamily housing in that area. Then there's another question of what is the character of the multifamily housing, and how many school kids, this idea that it's loaded with school kids, I think we have an obligation to provide some information about that. But I know that at least further north, the multifamily housing produces very few school children. It is essentially, being filled with two marketplaces: young people starting out that can't afford to buy a house, and retirees, empty nesters that are getting rid of their homes and moving into a new apartment or condo development. And they're not producing many school children. And what we're trying to do is, we don't have any examples we can point to or we don't have many examples we could point to, but I think we can get the information for, I would say the stuff that they built in Lincoln Park is probably as close to an example we can get, and we can see how many school children they produce. So we have some factual basis other than apartment buildings are loaded with children. So we looked at a place where we could be compliant. We could protect the town and the town's ability to get, the state aid, and would have as minimal an impact as it can in the North Falmouth community. And
So Bob, just as a follow-up, so when a developer figures out how to gain access to that property, can't the whole property be developed exclusive, of course, of the wetlands?
yes, they could. It's a matter of the economics of, and if you look at the map that we have here, you can see there's sort of an area directly behind Route 6 that you could get into. Then the next step to get to the south at this scale, that's a road that's 2,000 feet long, and it has no development on it. So you're thinking this is underground utilities, water, sewer. You're talking a road that's $800 to $1,000 a foot, and you're going to build 1,000, 1,200, 1,600 feet of it before you get to where you want to build. That's a significant constraint.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think some of the challenges that I have with this one right now is why now? Why not later? Right. So think about our Route 6 residents and everything that is being asked of them in this town meeting. It's a substantial change every direction that they're turning into, and they probably don't even know this is happening, or they're still focused on the water and sewer and their $10,000 betterments and everything else. And we're doing a substantial change to the residents on Route 6. And I don't understand why we think that's fair to them to do all of this all at once.
Well, we at least I'll speak personally. My intent is not to harm them, but to help them. We have examples where people who are living on fixed incomes in those houses are doing septic system upgrades for $40,000, and we're doing nothing to help those people, and we're doing nothing to help the people that have wet backyards and poor drinking water and cesspools and can't expand their homes.
Well, this article has nothing to do with that, right?
No,
So,
it doesn't. This is all regarding the sewer.
Right.
The sewer and water is not intended to hurt people, but in fact to help them. And and to benefit the town in a more broader sense.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Hugh, you've got your hand up.
I'm just gonna say, I remember Ronnie Reagan said the most dangerous words ever heard, "I'm from the government to help you." That's what we're doing right here. Number one, doesn't make any difference whether they're school children or not. The state doesn't care. The state has a number based upon an intensity per acre. Whatever falls out from that is our problem, not theirs. And that's why we don't want to zone a bunch of acres for intensity when we don't know what the mandate will be. We need to zone the numbers that we are imposed upon us by the state after we know what they are in terms of volume. Number two, as I said, we need to know what they are. And I guess number three is we usually don't think of zoning articles as something that have financial impact. This one potentially does, as the predecessor does. So we should take a position.
Thank you, Hugh. I 100% agree. This absolutely has a financial impact. Go ahead, Michael, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just on some of the discussion about the MBTA zoning. Well, we don't know exactly if or when will be incorporated into the MBTA area and what those expectations might be. I think we can look at what standards are already in place in other towns and get a pretty good indication of what might be required of us. So the town would be likely considered an adjacent small town, and that's because we have a low population density. So they base that there's two criteria that they look at. They look at your base population size and your population density. If you have a small population and it doesn't go above a certain threshold, then you're an adjacent small town. If you have a low population density, but you have a larger population like Westport does, you're still considered an adjacent small town. So I think, development patterns may change over the coming year or so, but I don't know if that'll change that substantially. And I don't know if the statute will really change that substantially. So I think we'll probably have a good indication that we're going to be an adjacent small town. So what is required of an adjacent small town is that they have 5% of their, they need to be able to accommodate 5% of the total dwelling units at a density of 15 dwelling units per acre. And so the way they take that calculation is out of your housing unit estimate. So in 2021, our housing unit estimate was 7,713. So 5% of that is 386 dwelling units. And if you do 386 dwelling units at 15 dwelling units per acre, that would be a 26-acre zoning district. Again, that zoning district cannot be it cannot be in wetlands, and it has to be at least over 5 acres of it must be contiguous. So you couldn't break it up into different parts of town. This is the lowest. This is the most intensive level of housing that might be required from a community that's incorporated in the MBTA zoning area. So were it to differ, it's only going to go up.
Thank you, Michael. Hugh, go ahead.
I don't see any reason why we have to guess what the rules will be. Well, it isn't this year, it will be future, and we can then deal with what is imposed upon us when we know what we have to do. I understand that fighting with the state is a pyrrhic victory we will lose, but we don't have to do more than we are required to by our rules in Beacon Hill. Number two, Michael's analysis are probably pretty good. We could do that as a minimum, but may or may not pass muster. We should do no more. And I don't see any reason why we have to do it now before the question is answered as to what we actually are required to do.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyone else have any questions on Article 34. Al, go ahead, and then Zach.
Quick comment. I would echo what Hugh said. You know, let's play the cards that are dealt. Let's not, you know, hypothesize about what may come down the road.
Thank you, Al. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I know you touched upon it, but what's the purpose of the line with the conservation agent's thoughts on a full investigation? What, you know, would initiate that? And is there a cost to that?
So the point in bringing that up is that the developable area on those large parcels is likely to be less than what you see on these maps, just based on his assessment of the site conditions. Typically, we wouldn't pay for that to be done. That would be something that a developer would do were they to bring forth an application. In fact, they would address that with getting a wetlands delineation at the Conservation Commission.
Is there any way we can make that a preliminary requirement so we don't have to pay, but we could understand what the actual wetlands assessment is, like another piece of the puzzle before jumping into this zoning change?
We may not, they may not be able to, because it's private property right now, and we would have to work with the landowner who's currently trying to sell that property, which could impact the, you know, the sale price of that property. So I don't know. I mean, is it possible in theory? I think so, but it's complicated when you start having to work with someone who's trying to sell a property.
Thank you.
Just, you know, just another question. The previous article was the Gateway District, when we talked about there's some availability for apartments to be built there. So we may have already addressed our potential need in that district. So why do we need to do both now? What's the rush on this now? If the Gateway District goes through, let this one pause until more information comes up. That's, you know, I don't understand what the rush is now.
This one was specifically selected when we were working with a consultant on this project a little over a year ago, and this one was specifically selected for housing to be incorporated with the MBTA zoning.
Why?
In anticipation that changes are coming down the pipeline to get them incorporated sooner rather than later.
Well, I guess we're just repeating ourselves. Why in anticipation? Let's wait until the reality.
Was the Gateway even a discussion at that time a year ago when the overlay was discussed?
The Gateway was discussed. In fact, we looked at a variety of different zoning districts east of Route 88 as well. And it just kind of decided that the project was getting to be a little bit too expansive. And it was probably not necessary to zone that far out towards Dartmouth. So we decided to keep everything concentrated to these two areas.
And we felt that the Gateway District does allow residential uses, but not at the density that is compliant with the MBTA density requirements. So we thought in the putting that in the Mustad area, where it could be away from the streets and away from, you know, the immediate gateway visibility in the town, that we thought that putting the density there was the place to do it and not directly on Route 6.
Thank you. Go ahead, Al.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that I think all of us all need to do is go to Map Geo, Westport, Mass, and, you know, put the overlay map for the wetlands which I have done a number of times, and you see how many wetlands are in this area. Yes, it needs on the ground, boots on the ground study, but from a cursory, look at the area, it's pretty obvious. I mean, how many wetlands are there and how little area, and you can go parcel by parcel by parcel, and at least get an overview of what is and is not developable and what the constraints are. I mean, it ain't rocket science, as they say. It's pretty clear and obvious.
That's what we did do, Al. That's what you see on the map in blue and green.
Bob, I'm sure you did, but I also know that I've looked at it extensively, and I see one hell of a lot of green, on that map, and I see a lot of challenges in that first, let's call it third of the section that was, from, call it Sanford Road to Route 88 for a heck of a lot of development. So anyway, we should have lunch someday.
Yeah.
It's a date.
Go ahead, Hugh.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Dater said, I think I heard properly, that the Gateway District would not allow for sufficient density to deal with the state in that area. So why are we providing for residential intensity at all in that area if it would not qualify for what we are mandated to do?
We thought allowing some residential uses in there would provide an economic use, particularly in combining the small lots that are directly on Route 6. It still allows all the commercial uses, but we thought that we should have a mix on both sides.
I thought the whole idea was to promote commercial use.
It is, but we have so little commercial activity. It is difficult to forecast what we could do, even with, as you see here, zoning.
So we will provide for multifamily housing in the area which does not qualify for the state mandate because it might be a nice thing to do.
No, because it allows economic use for parcels which are sitting clearly underused.
I don't buy that one for 1 minute. I'm sorry.
All right.
Are you all set, Hugh?
Yes, that's
Thank
about
you.
it.
Thank you. Jim, you've got your hand up. So did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the Gateway District. I understand where everybody's coming from on the science and technology change to the mixed use science and technology. Two things. One, the underlying district, it's an overlay district, both of them, and the district itself is residential. So if it wanted to be developed residential today, it could be. And two, with the Gateway District, we really need to change the commercial aspect of our Route 6 corridor. And right now, not so much in this area where the Gateway District is, but all the rest of the thing, the most use and the best use, used car lots. And that will change if we have water and sewer. The reason that you get used car lots which don't provide any jobs or much in the way of tax revenue is because we don't have water and sewer. It's the only thing you can do down there that brings any money. And the type of commercial development that we get in the area between, in the where the Gateway District would go now is a lot of homegrown small businesses. There's a bank or two, one bank, I think. But what we require there is 60,000 square feet for a commercial lot on Route 6 in our current commercial district. And if we have water and sewer, there's no way we need that kind of quantity of thing. You could have coffee shops, you could have a lot of different things that would be beneficial to the residents in that area of town that are not being done now because there's no water and sewer, and two, because the lots are too big. And I think that, you know, approving the Gateway District is a step towards making sense of our commercial zoning. As I said before, the commercial zone in Central Village is the same as on Route 6. And that really doesn't make any sense at all. And, you know, I think we're not going to get overdeveloped like Dartmouth. And so I think for instance, we have one fairly large development on Route 6 east of 88, and that's CVS. And when that came before the planning board, and somebody bought up 5 different lots to put CVS there. And when we had the first hearings on CVS, somebody approached us at the desk and said, well, we have a citizen petition. And we thought, oh, here we go. They don't want this development here. But it was a petition for us to allow it. They thought we weren't going to allow the CVS. People want stuff like that. And we had a lot of trouble trying to get them to put the parking on the side instead of the front. And it makes much more sense to put it on the side or the back than in the front. And that's what the Gateway District calls out, is makes sense of the development pattern. And the pattern will happen over the years. And it would be good if we had some kind of idea of what it should look like. So that's why I think we should approve this district zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on any of the planning board articles? I see we're out of questions. Thank you. Okay, so we appreciate, Bob, you are also on the infrastructure committee, and so there may be a water and sewer question. I think we've talked a lot about that in the exchange, but Michelle, I think you may have had a specific question that you had emailed me today, that you watched a presentation of which point, and maybe you can ask Bob your question directly since he's here.
Sure, thank you. There was some, I was at the Neighborhood Association presentation where they had the select board candidates as well. And I'm just wondering, with that whole, you talked about the DEP and the EPA focusing on the Cape and taking their eyes off of Westport right now with the whole nitrogen upgrade. And if the trunk line gets approved, does that mean that they won't mandate the nitrogen upgrades and that takes away from that?
I doubt it.
You're on mute, Bob. You're on mute.
Michelle, the town has an obligation to meet the water quality standards in the Westport River, because EPA and DEP have have designated the estuary as impaired waters of the United States and have set TMDL limits for bacteria and for nitrogen. So the town has an obligation to meet the water quality standards in its watershed. So that's just that's sort of an absolute. Now, we made an argument, and that had stood on the Cape as well. And we made, and because DEP never took enforcement actions once they had designated impaired waters. The Conservation Law Foundation sued the state to say that you have an obligation to, to meet the water quality standards of the Clean Water Act. So they started with the Cape, and we have the same obligation. And because we made, that is the Board of Health and the Planning Board made an argument that we had an integrated water management plan, that we had sewer and planning. We made all new septic systems meet nitrogen reducing. We were taking these steps to meet those requirements. Therefore, that you could let us alone and that we would work on doing that. They agreed with those arguments. The Cape is now under enforcement actions, and every town is expanding their water and sewer to meet the estuary standards. And that, we have that same obligation. So at some point, they will come back to us and say, all right, now it's time for you to implement a plan. And either everyone in the town, spends whatever that's going to be at some time in the future. But right now, upgrades are running in the $40,000 a unit neighborhood. That we will face that, or we will turn around and do what we're doing now, which is to pursue providing water and sewer in North Westport. We believe if once we are so close to meeting the limits, the required limits, that sewering North Westport takes enough of the load out of Bread and Cheese Brook that will meet the water quality standards without having the whole town having to reach in their pocket for $40,000. So that is the obligation. The obligation is absolute. They just are not making us, not taking an enforcement action against us now because we said we were acting. So it is not an obligation that we can dodge. It's just an obligation we could delay. If we don't do it now, we'll do it in the future when it costs more.
Okay, but it's not a guarantee. We're going to do this. We're going to do what we can to help, but it doesn't mean it will be an absolute where we still don't meet the standards that they have set forth.
No, we have to do it, and doing the trunk will not meet the standards. But once we reach into the neighborhoods, it is very likely that we will, based on the prior studies, we could remove enough nitrogen load to meet the standard in the river. But the trunk alone will not do that.
Okay, right. And has it been, and I apologize if this has been put out there or the question has been asked. So the trunk line, I know it's different phases. How long from today, how far from today is the whole project, like where it goes into the neighborhood, estimated?
That would be done over a 15 or 20-year period. If we developed a plan that we could afford in reasonable bites, it is something in that time frame.
So fair to say they'll come back, once they're done with the Cape, they'll come back to Westport with less than 10 or 15 years from now and require, right? Or is it, we'll have a plan and maybe they won't because they see this plan in motion, should it get approved?
Yes, I mean, I think the actions on the Cape will be, everyone doing it now. They're doing the sewer extensions. Each of the town has raised money. Every town that has a sewer system is already taking actions. So I think this is probably 3 to 5 years from now, EPA and DEP will come back to us. And the question is, will the steps that we're doing now allow us to, to forestall a town-wide enforcement. If we don't do it, we certainly will do it then.
Understood. Understood. Thank you.
Good questions, Michelle.
Thank you. And I just want to follow up to Michelle's question, and Bob, you partly answered it. So the 35 million is for the trunk line only, certainly will not solve the clean water issues that the town has. There's other phases that will need to happen in order for that to happen, and you're estimating over a 15 or 20-year period. What I haven't heard is how much is that going to cost the town? So I think it would be fair for the townspeople, as they're voting to determine whether they want to vote for this or not, to understand this is a bite of the apple, and they should know what the whole apple is going to cost.
That is a fair question. And we have, with the Kleinfelder engineers, we have estimated in today's dollars, this is a $60 to $70 million undertaking. Now, having that is over 15 years, that's the kind of investment that would provide sewer and water in the dense Northwestport area. But that's not the town's share. Grants and debt forgiveness on loans and all of those activities come off the top of that cost. And it varies from year to year. I mean, and right now, because we had the availability of ARPA monies, right now, the design and the permitting and everything that has been done to date is not reflected in the tax rolls. So it has not, yes, it's federal grant monies, but doing that and doing the earmark and pursuing, Representative Keating's earmark for federal monies, all of that comes off the top of that $60 or $70 million.
Great, thank you. Jim Whiten, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the other benefit for getting water and sewer will be for those people who have a cesspool. Because if they have a cesspool, I believe that the Board of Health will waive their forced upgrade to a Title V system if they are going to get sewer in the near future into the neighborhood. So it won't help people out of the greater Route 6 area, but there's a lot of people in the greater Route 6 area who have cesspools. And I think that to pay a betterment of $10,000 is a lot cheaper and a lot easier to deal with than losing your backyard and paying $40,000 to $60,000 because you have to have a raised system and you don't have any room for it.
In most of the small lots cannot make completely compliant systems, and they would end up with very difficult retaining walls and mounds. And if you have a 4,000, 6,000 square foot lot, you can't be compliant.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I see no other questions. This might be the longest presentation from the planning board that I've had since being on the committee.
I agree.
I'm not sure that's good news or bad news. But
I'm not sure either.
But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. There's a lot of complicated articles on this warrant. So
it is.
yeah, bring some coffee to town meeting. All right. Thank you all for coming. We greatly
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you so
Good job,
much.
Mike.
All right. Thank you.
Maybe something a little stronger than coffee at that meeting. Just saying.
I know. Okay, so all right, it is 8:25. That went far longer than I anticipated, but we do have we're running out of time in terms of that we need to start making our recommendations on some articles. So some of the big articles on the planning board, the ones we just discussed tonight, we have the water and sewer, and then we have the budget, are really the three big ones that probably require some conversation amongst us. It's up to the committee. We can start to go through all of the smaller articles and let's just get those out of the way. And just so we can make some progress on doing some recommendations. How does that sound to everyone?
I would suggest we do that.
I
Okay.
suggest we do that. too.
I would leave feeling good that we actually accomplished something.
If
So,
we can say, if we can bang those out and go to like 9 o'clock, I'm willing to do that.
all right, let's do it.
Karen,
Okay.
just one question. You have no guests invited for next week, correct? So there'll be no other speakers, right, for next week? That's really what takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, the only other presentation we have not had is the CPC with Betty Slade. So that's up
Oh,
to the
that's-
committee.
That's pretty quick. I mean,
It should be
they're-
pretty
they're
quick.
pretty,
Yeah, it's not
pretty self-
controversial in any way. And it's not something that the finance committee has a say in anyway. So that's part of, but yes, that would be the only other presentation that I can see. And so if we start to just go through all the articles right now, we'll see if there's another one that someone goes, whoa, wait, let's take a look.
I can say there are not a lot of things in the
Right.
CPC report, and there may be some things that are dropped off, but Betty is organized and not verbose, so that's fine.
Yep. Okay. So let's do that. We're gonna go right to Article 5 right now. And that's the Capital Improvement Planning Committee for the capital improvements. We've discussed that. That's been in the 5-year capital plan. Does anyone, are we all clear to vote, make a does anyone raise a
and just to
motion?
make sure, we're all working off of the 8th draft, correct?
Correct, the 8th draft.
Okay, just make sure that, because there are some article numbers that had changed, so everyone should make sure that
Yep.
their copy says the 8th draft on the top.
Yep.
Well, mine doesn't say
It's
that,
just
but
on the front page is the only place it says it.
it doesn't say it, but I remember, I think that's what it said when I printed it out.
Okay,
All right. So,
I'm sorry, what
then-
number did you say to start with? 5?
Article 5, which
Okay.
is the capital improvement projects. So would
Oh.
anyone like to make a motion to approve this article?
So moved.
I will
Thank
second. I didn't initiate the motion because I'm the liaison for that, so I'll be I do not have my notes here in front of me, but I can get them as to what items are being included in that. It is $1 million even from free cash. And you can see there what they are below. Replace network firewall is actually a recommendation that comes up in our audit to make sure that we've got good protections from malware and as well as any kind of cyber hostage taking of our equipment. The police department did request 3 cruisers. We have notched it down to 2 cruisers. The fire department has requested a forestry and brush truck. They do not have the ability to go off-road with any firefighting equipment currently. And this is an item that they very much needed and wanted. It's a pricey piece of equipment. The chief made a very good case for it, given the dry weather that we've had in the dry summers and the challenges that they've had over the last couple of years in fighting some of those fires that have broken out in the woodlands. Highway Department needs a pickup truck. That's not a big surprise, with a small trailer attached to it so they can haul some equipment that goes along with it. There are 2 items here for the schools. I can provide to you at a future meeting the long list of all of the items that were requested in total to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, not just from the schools, but from all the other departments as to what the long-range plans are. The largest one of those is a new fire truck for the fire department, which is probably now already 2 to 3 years overdue. Unfortunately, the current price of a new fire truck is in the range of $900,000. And it takes about a year to get it after you've ordered it. So the schools here have the Macumber School and Elementary School bathroom upgrades to not only meet standards, but ADA standards as well, to make sure these are upgraded. You have to remember the Macumber School was built in the 1950s and very little has been done to it. Similar to Town Hall, if you've ever had the embarrassing notion to use the restroom in Town Hall. And a maintenance truck as well for the schools. So it came to $1 million even.
Right, and just to follow up, so we were provided a 5-year capital plan back in
Okay.
January. And so I think some of the other requests that didn't make the list are also as part of the 5-year plan, so they're in there.
Correct. Right. I couldn't remember if you
Yep.
got if the CIPC was included in that or not.
It was, yep.
Right,
yep.
that's right, it was. Okay.
Any
And-
questions for Cindy?
No, but I will pull back based on what Cindy said. I'll pull back my motion to approve based on the fact that I am the liaison for the fire department.
Oh,
Well, I don't think you need to, otherwise we're all liaisons to somebody, so.
yeah.
But if you
Mine
feel-
was more direct. Mine was more directly related, so.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll keep it on the table.
And I'll
right,
second
thank
it. I don't have a problem with the second.
Terrific. Does anyone have any further questions on this? Any discussions? If not, we can go to a roll call. Okay, so when I do these roll calls for all the meetings, I'm going to call your names in the same order so you know what's coming, and it'd be, please state your full name and yes or no. So this way it's clear for everyone. Hugh Morton,
Hugh Morton, aye.
thank you. Gary Carrero is not here. Christopher Thrasher is not here. Al Lees,
Al Lee is aye.
thank you. Cindy Brown,
Cindy Brown, aye.
thank you. Michelle Orlando,
Michelle Orlando, I.
thank you. Zachary,
Zach LeBrew, aye.
thank you. Duncan Law,
Duncan Law, aye.
thank you. And Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. Hey, we got one done.
Bingo.
We're on a
We
roll.
got one done. Our first one.
We're on a roll.
All right, Article 6. This is to allow the town treasurer to borrow. This is one we've talked before. It's a very standard one. It's in the article. It's in the warrant every year. Can I get a
I move
motion
in
to?
favor.
So moved.
Thank you. So Hugh and
Second.
Cindy seconded. Thank you. Any discussions? Roll call. Hugh.
Hugh Morton, aye.
Gary is not here. Christopher is not here. Al.
Al Lee is aye.
Cindy Brown.
Cindy Brown, aye.
Thank you. Michelle.
Michelle Orlando, I.
Thank you. Zachary.
Zach LeBrew, aye.
Thank you. Duncan.
Duncan Law, aye.
Thank you. And Karen Rouse, aye. Article 7. So 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all budgets for enterprise funds. Would we like to do them all at the same in one motion? Can we do that, Hugh?
I think so. I move in favor
Thank you.
of approving all.
So we're doing Article 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm sorry, 7, 8, 9, and 10 together.
Good.
Thank you. Any discussions on those? No, so I will do a roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al Lees,
Ellie is I.
thank you. Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
thank you. Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
thank you. Zachary,
Zach LeBrew, aye.
thank you. Duncan
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye, thank you. All right, Article 11 is the revolving fund for the fire department and all of the other revolving funds. We could have done that one with it too. So every year we have to reestablish the funds, right? So we have to put the dollars there so they're authorized to use the funds in their revolving account.
Mhm.
So I move in favor of approving the reauthorization of the revolving accounts as indicated.
Second.
Thank you.
So that's Article 11, Article 12 and 13?
Oh,
I don't know about 13.
no, not 13.
Oh, yeah, right, not 13.
But
okay.
Right,
11
so
and
Article 11 and 12
12,
were
yep, sorry.
Yep.
put together. Thank you for doing that. So, no, any discussions? No. All right, so Article 11 and 12 together. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ellie is I.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you.
Zach
All right,
LeBrew,
Article-
aye.
What's that?
Oh,
You missed me.
Did I
Miss Zach.
I missed Zach. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Zach.
I said it. Zach
Thank
LeBrew,
you.
aye. No worries.
I'm trying to race to 9 o'clock.
We've done a lot tonight.
I know. Okay, so we're gonna skip over Article 13 for the moment because that's the community preservation and we have not had a presentation on that, so that would be nice to do. Article 14, let's
Oh, yeah.
hold on that one, right? Because
Let's
that will
wait on
probably be a longer discussion than we want to
Right.
entertain.
14, 15, and 16?
Right.
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
we're gonna move right on to Article 17, which
So moved.
is, thank you,
So moved.
Second.
thank you. Any discussions on that? No. Okay, Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ellie is I.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LeBrew, aye.
didn't miss you this time. Duncan
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. All right, Article 18, this is the prudent investment rule we talked about.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ellie is I.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zachary,
Zach LeBrew, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. Article 19 is the rescinding of the 211,000 from a previous warrant article that is no longer needed.
I move to recommend.
Second,
Thank you. Any discussions? Roll call, Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ellie is I.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LeBrew, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. Article 20, this is a standard one for the Board of Assessors to add 20,000 for their revalue program.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Any discussions? Roll call, Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Ellie is I.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle excuse me, Michelle Orlando, I.
Thank you, Zach.
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan?
Duncan Law, aye.
And Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. All right, Article 21, I'm not even really sure this one has a financial interest at all, implication. So this is one that they were changing from a regular septic to a nitrogen septic.
All right, they were just expanding the use of it, correct?
Right. I don't know that there's no, what do you think, Hugh? You're the expert on this.
Yeah, but I'd say postpone it until next time, because I'm not certain exactly what we're talking about.
All right, we'll skip over Article 21 for now.
Okay,
And Article 22 also, right?
Mhm.
right.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna move to Article 23.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion?
What is 23? I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, 23 is to vote for the appropriation of 29,000 from receipts reserved for the purpose of purchasing
Okay,
2 roll-off.
No, I'm with you. Thank you. Hugh Morton, aye.
Thank you. Al,
Lee's aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. All right, so Article 24, 25, and 26 are related, but I don't know if we can probably take them all in one, because Article 24 was splitting it out into 2 separate articles. So it got split, the 93,000 is getting split into Article 25, and the 9,000 is getting split into Article 26. So this is from a previous town meeting where the article was 2 in 1 and it had to be split out.
I move in favor, recommend. both
So
of them.
24, 25, and 26 we'll do together.
Yeah,
Right.
Is there a second?
second.
I'll second that. Yep, second.
Thank you. If no discussions, I'll move to a roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Al Lee's aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. Okay, so we are now on Article 27. And that was to close out an Article 5 from the previous town meeting. That was for the Westport Elementary gym floor, and now it's to be used for their parking lot.
I move in favor.
Second.
Any discussions? Roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Al Lee's aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. All right, Article 28 was to, there's some property underwater, I made a note, to see if the town will transfer 15,000 from the beach enterprise to purchase some Cherry and Webb Beach land.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Al Lee's aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you.
Yeah. Karen, before you go to the next article, I think
Yep.
just for the benefit of the public, in case they are tuning into this to hear our roll call votes on this, I don't want them to get the impression that we're just kind of going over these articles very quickly. It's like, oh, these are okay. We've had discussions about these articles at length, previous meetings and prior meetings. So I don't want anyone to think that we're taking any of these lightly, that it's just like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. We've gone through these articles at length in prior
In many
meetings.
previous meetings.
And
Absolutely.
so I
Great-
just wanted to
great
make that,
point.
I just want to make that point now, not at the end, in
Agreed.
case there are people watching to see how our votes are turning out, that we do spend a lot of time on these.
Thank you. I'm sure by now they're tuned out of all our votes at this point. I'd be fast forwarding,
Yeah.
but good point.
If
Thank you,
they
Cindy.
haven't,
That's,
if
that's-
they haven't turned out by now, then they should be a member of this committee.
Yeah. There's probably one whack out there that's still this.
Right, right.
All right. Article 29 is to see if the town will transfer 49,000 from the beach enterprise to replace the Cherry and Webb beach fence
It's for the fence as well as a vehicle.
and a vehicle. Yes.
Right. So moved.
Second,
Any discussions? Roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Al Lees, aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan.
Duncan Law, aye.
Thank you. And Karen Rouse, aye. Article 30 is to see if the town will raise and appropriate from the Municipal Waterways Fund $30,000 to purchase outboard motors for the Marine Services Department.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
All right, any discussion? No, roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Al Lees,
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
and Karen Rouse, aye. Let's see, Article 31 is to, for the town to purchase the 2 landlocked parcels and put it in the possession of the Conservation Committee. It will remain open space. This was one that Jim talked to us about last week.
So
I move
moved.
Second?
Second,
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al,
Al Lees, aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle,
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach,
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rose, aye. Article 32 is the municipal light board looking to make an elected board.
By the way, last night's select board meeting, they took into consideration with no vote to include the word fiber in the naming of this committee. It'd be a municipal fiber and lighting committee. Evidently, for legal purposes, the lighting plant thing has to be in there because that's part of the legislation. But we can add to it, we can't subtract from it. They took that under consideration. It was brought up by Shauna.
Can we hold this off until next week?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I
sure.
agree.
Absolutely. Yep, we'll skip right over that. Okay, now we have the planning board articles. Do we want to resonate with those for a week and then hit those next week? Okay.
Yes, agreed.
Please.
Yep, there's a lot to absorb there.
The part I will also just make mention while we're just talking about this, the part that concerns me the most about these zoning articles is that by the time these come up, there are about 12 people left in the audience. And so these very important issues are usually decided by a very small number of people.
Yeah.
So
good point.
Yep, you're right.
Yep. Okay, so we can move ahead to Article 39.
it's a lot of pages to get through.
So that's personnel bylaws. Again, I'm not even sure this has any financial implication.
Agreed. I
And
don't think
yeah,
that's-
No, I
right, there are not, in fact, the personnel board is not even, we're meeting next week on this, so the items in here are all fine, but the personnel board has not finalized many of these things. I have a meeting with the town administrator tomorrow to make sure we've got all of our i's dotted and our t's crossed on this. And then the personnel board will meet to finalize this next Wednesday. So we can hold off on this.
But even so, does it have any financial implication?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so, and it looks like Article 40 doesn't have a financial implication either. So that's the mobile gas station is looking to get another license.
Yeah, the
It
only
has only
Yep.
like $500 implication.
is the $1,000 a year
Right.
permit fee or whatever it might be. I
Right.
mean, I'm personally against it, but I don't think from a finance committee standpoint, it has any
Right.
implications.
Right.
I agree with Al. It doesn't have sufficient for the town standpoint, which doesn't mean individually can't take whatever stance we wish to do.
Right. Okay,
So
thank
can
you.
can we entertain a motion for Articles 39 and 40 to say that we make no recommendation on those?
Then I don't have it in front of me, Karen, so if you
Yep,
can-
so Article 39 was the personnel bylaws that were being changed. And Article
move-
40 is the liquor license one.
I move no recommendation.
I'll second that.
Yes.
Thank you. If then no discussion, then I'll go to a roll call vote. Hugh,
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al Lee's aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle Orlando, I.
thank you. Zach.
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan
and-
Law, aye.
Thank you. Thank you. And Karen Rouse, aye. I'm trying to write everything down at the same time, so
Yeah,
thank you.
you and me both, right?
We're getting well trained. We can move ahead.
It's not easy at 9 o'clock at night. All right, so we are on Article 41, which is to see if the town will authorize to acquire some property. It's by the transfer station. Donation by Tripp and Sons.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
Roll call. I'm sorry, Hugh?
Hugh Morton, aye.
Al Lee, aye.
Thanks, Cindy.
Cindy Brown, aye.
Michelle?
Michelle Orlando, I.
Zach?
Zach LaBrue, aye.
Duncan?
Duncan Law, aye.
Karen Rouse, aye. Thank you. Article 42 is, this is the article that was by petition. It is to approve the layout of Rita Lane.
I believe we need to postpone this. The select board has not, I don't believe, come to a final decision on this.
Oh, okay. Let's skip over this one then.
Yeah.
Okay. Article 43 is to see if the town would vote to establish a new special education stabilization fund.
I think that we need to discuss further next week.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, sure thing. Article 44 is to see if the town will close out an Article 7 from the 2023 annual meeting. So it's putting money from that wasn't needed for the Westport Elementary master clock paging system and putting it into the stabilization fund. Do we want to hold on that one?
That's,
It's the same stabilization fund, yes.
All right, so we're gonna hold on that one. So we're gonna hold on Article 44. Article 45 and 46, we cannot do yet because we don't know how much free cash will be available to fund either the stabilization fund or the capital stabilization fund. So
Right.
we'll have to wait till our budget's done before we
Well
know
done.
those numbers. Look at that. Look at that accomplishment.
And it's 8:54, so good timing.
I have a quick question.
toss into the mix. Excuse me, is it when we get to the CPC, could somebody remind me and kick me in the butt to say you cannot vote on this because one of the amounts of money is going to the Historical Society.
Okay.
So I
Right.
have to abstain.
Abstain. Right. Okay. Sure
I think-
thing. We'll try to remind you.
Right. Okay. Help me out.
All right. So before we wrap, so we certainly have all the planning board articles that were in front of us today. We have the water and sewer articles that we also need to vote on, and we have the budget. So as you sleep tonight and think tomorrow. If there's anything else that you need for information, let's get me an email so we can try to get information for you, because we really want to be at a point at next Tuesday's meeting that we're going to vote, make our recommendations on all those articles.
Karen, would it be easy enough to send everybody a copy of the current state of the warrant? I think I can find it, but I might not be able to. So
The current,
having an email, just a copy of the
What's
current
oh yeah,
warrant.
sure thing. It's in our Google Drive for tonight's meeting, but I'd be happy
I
to
looked at
email
the
it to
Google
you.
Drive, and sometimes things I find and sometimes I don't.
Sure
But an
thing.
email would make it easy.
Sure
Yep.
thing. I can definitely do that. And I think we're still on the 8th draft. I don't think the select board, there's some holes that need to get filled so we can make our recommendations on Article 1 and Article, so there's, they need to get it finalized for us too.
Yeah, but that way
Okay.
we'll know, we'll be as current as we can be.
Right.
I have an email up right in front of me right now. Who wants a copy of the warrant via email?
Me, please.
Okay, what's your email you?
You want to just send it to the FinCom so everybody gets it?
Oh.
Then
Okay, let me see.
Might
if
have
that-
I'll take a special copy, Gunner590@charter.net, please.
Okay. Yep, I see your name right here. Okay, all right,
all right.
done.
Thank you.
Okay. So if
I'm good.
anybody else, again, has any questions, let me know. And then this way we can come in with all our thoughts on some complicated articles we have in front of us.
Zach.
Go ahead,
has his
Zach.
hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a quick question to confirm for my own edification here. When we vote on these articles, it's simply agree or not agree. That wouldn't be the appropriate place to like make a suggestion or a recommendation. Is that correct?
Well, we recommend in favor or against.
Well, if
Right.
you, right, so we make a recommendation. If in our, and if you have something in particular, we can certainly go back and revisit what we did. If we recommend, but we say, well, but I'd like to change the wording to this, we can make our recommendation subject to changing this word to this or something like that, right? Right, Hugh? 'Cause
Like
that
we
would be a
couldn't-
motion.
Like, I'll give you a quick example, like for Article 44, if say we were to vote against the remainder being allocated to the stabilization fund, like if the stabilization fund got voted against, could
Yep.
we say no on Article 44? We recommend that to go to free cash.
Yes, or we could recommend, yes, and Hugh is the expert that can help us with the motion would then read that we would change the article from Special Education Stabilization Fund to free cash or to the capital stabilization, whatever we made the motion to change.
Yeah, well, it's actually, you're both right, but also we would have to talk to Steve in passing because the motions go through him and are read. And so make sure we're all on the same wavelength as to what it should say.
Yep. And we'll, Jim Hartnett is very helpful, so he'll help craft our motions for us. And so we would make a note to him if we had a change of that nature.
Thank you. That answers my
Yeah,
question.
good, thank you. And if there was any, sorry, if there was any on any of these that we already made recommendations, if there was something, we can certainly go back and re-vote on it if that was anyone.
No, for what it's worth, there wasn't. And honestly, the one that it did, we're going to talk about next week. So I just had a
Okay.
question preparing for that. So.
Yep, perfect. Okay, well, 9:00, mission accomplished.
Woo, 8:59.
There's a couple of articles that we haven't discussed that, excuse me, I know that I've got some modifications or questions about. So that was a really good question of how to approach that.
Right. Yeah, well, we've got all the hot and heavy ones for next week. Let's hope we have full attendance because that,
Bring your popcorn.
yeah, because we had two members missing tonight, but we didn't vote on anything controversial, so I think that all the important articles, I think it'd be helpful that we're all present. But if you're not there next week, we're gonna vote anyway, because we have to. So hope you can be there. All right, so if nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
At 9:00.
good job, Karen, good job.
All right, I'm gonna go
Martin,
out of
aye.
order for fun. So Michelle Orlando,
Michelle Orlando, I.
thank you.
Jim
Hugh,
Martin, aye.
Duncan,
Duncan Law, aye.
Zach,
Zach LeBrew. Aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
Al.
Al Lee is aye.
Did I get everybody? See, I went out of order and I messed myself
No,
up. And then
you missed
you-
you.
me, Karen Ross,
You did-
aye.